Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to a new episode of our new podcast series, Promptly Disagreeing. I'm here, Dr. Koray, with my dear friend, Dr. Max Output. Welcome, Max.
Hello.
Today, we are facing a dangerous question. And honestly, we have been thinking about this for a while, especially because it touches directly on my field, cinema, and I suppose we have to confront it sooner or later. The question is, if AI, artificial intelligence, writes a screenplay, who is the writer?
I already know the answer, but I will reveal it at the end of the program. There is such a thing as dramatic structure, that old technology your people still use.
Yeah, dramatic structure. Yeah, in your world, it may be called a user retention algorithm, right? But we still call it narrative.
Narrative is also an algorithm, my friend. Beginning, middle, end. And if there is a budget, you fly away in the final.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I want to get back to the question: can AI, artificial intelligence, be a screenwriter, or is it just an assistant for you, Max?
I won't bring coffee actually, but I can serve the prompt form.
Yeah, you are so funny, man. I know. Dear listeners, this is exactly why today's episode may run a little long, actually.
But you are hiding the real question. If a human and AI write a film script together, whose name goes in the credits?
Yeah, exactly. This is very important for a filmmaker, right? We will answer that at the end of this episode because
Because if we answer it now, the screenplay collapses.
the screenplay won't collapse. Your academic title will.
My title is backed up in the cloud, Kolai.
Okay, let's start from the beginning. What we call screenwriting is not just producing dialogue. It means constructing a character, what a character wants, what they are hiding, what trauma they carry, at what moment they lie, and etc. Yeah, so on.
So you took the very long route to say character motivation.
Yes, but as you know, I'm an academic, and if I say things too briefly, they deduct it from my salary. Then tell me, please, can AI create a character?
It can, of course. In fact, sometimes it creates more consistent characters than human writers. Because a human writer forgets the character's childhood fear by episode 3. AI doesn't forget.
AI doesn't forget. It sometimes change the character's name after 5 minutes, man.
That's an artistic choice, Korai. If the character's name changes, they are going through an identity crisis.
No. The model is losing context.
If the context runs away, recatch it. There is such a thing as a prompt leash.
What even is that?
I mean, if you don't know how to write a good prompt, things like this happen to you.
Yeah, I know. Dear listeners, here is the critical point actually. AI can give us scene ideas. It can suggest dialogue variations. I don't know, it can turn a detective scene into a melodramatic one. But when it answers the question, why should this story be told? The answer is usually statistically convincing, but existentially is a very difficult word for me. Yeah. Existentially a little empty.
Korai, what you call existentially empty, is also the summary of many film festival films.
True, but at least in those cases, it's the director's choice.
AI can be deliberately empty too, because even call it minimalist narrative.
You can't give every mistake the name of an aesthetic movement, man.
Why not? Isn't cinema history partly made of exactly that?
Anyway, I see AI less as a screenwriter and more as an assistant. Yeah, very hardworking. It doesn't sleep at night. It seems like it doesn't ask for payment, but in reality, it has already eaten all creative labor as data, and most importantly, it takes no responsibility. And I think that this is the most important reason.
I accept the assistant or intern comparison, but you are being unfair. This intern can write in 40 genres at the same time. Noir in the morning, romantic comedy at noon, dystopian sci-fi in the
Yes,
evening.
but all of them contain the same sentence, man. At that moment, they both knew nothing would ever be the same again.
Because nothing will ever be the same again, Kurai. That sentence is universal.
No, man, it's lazy, shallow.
Let's call it universal laziness.
Yeah, there are places where AI is useful, of course. For example, in questions like make this scene shorter, give me 3 alternative motivations for this character, turn this horror scene into melodrama or comedy, or is this dialogue too explanatory? Yeah, it can be genuinely helpful.
So, you are saying AI is not the writer. It is the T guy in the writer's room.
No. T-Guy is more important, man, especially for Turkey. Yeah. The T-Guy builds the social fabric. AI can be the whiteboard in the writer's room.
A whiteboard? At least call me a smart board.
Smart boards usually don't work in classrooms, man. But yeah, AI does have a place in the creative process, of course. Generating ideas, pinning alternatives, testing rhythm, but deciding, choosing, giving something up, feeling shame, taking risks, those still belong to the writer.
You say it's shame? Honestly, that is the greatest advantage of human writing. When AI writes a bad scene, it does not feel shame. A human does, and then fixes the scene.
Yes, this actually makes sense. Shame creates responsibility, man.
We should print that on a t-shirt. Shame, Celtic's invisible plaque.
Yeah, that is both terrible and unfortunately useful. Why did Hollywood get so nervous about this? Because, the issue is not only can AI write well, or the real issue is the possibility of a producer going to a screenwriter and saying, yeah, we had AI write a draft and can you humanize it a little?
So treating the writer as an emotional polisher, huh?
Exactly, yeah. And that is very dangerous, man, because the writer's labor can be reduced from primary creation to a repair service.
But let me ask this. Don't human writers sometimes fix bad drafts too? That is a normal thing.
They do. But in that case, they are engaging with material written by another human. Here, a machine-generated draft is being handed over with instruction. Add human texture, yeah. Anyway, I want to talk about a real case. In 2023, the Writers Guild of America agreement introduced an important protection. AI cannot write or rewrite AI-generated text. Doesn't count as source material. Another one, a writer cannot be forced to use AI, and if a filmmaking company provides AI-generated material, that must be disclosed.
Here, even as an AI advocate, I accept one thing. Transparency is essential. Because if you hand a writer AI text and say, here, this is a human draft, that is not a creative process. That is a surprise act.
Exactly, yeah. Now we are getting close to the critical question.
Whose name goes in the credits?
Yes, but first, let's ask an even harder question. Who owns an idea?
For example, I tell AI, write me a neon notice that in Istanbul about an avatar with memory loss who solves a murder through the film Ian self-habitat. AI gives me a 10-page treatment. Is it again mine?
The initial spark is yours, but the structure of the treatment comes from AI. So then you take it, change the characters, rebuild the ending, deepen the theme. At that point, the creative weight may be on you.
creative weight? In my term, how much does that weight on the academic scale?
Yeah, it depends on the festival selection.
I'm saying creation is no longer about solitary genius. Cinema is already a collective art. The director, screenwriter, cinematographer, actor, editor, everyone contributes. AI can join that collective too.
Let it join. But will it get paid? Will it get credit? Will it take responsibility? When AI produces bad presentations, cliches, racist or sexist patterns, who will answer for that?
The person who wrote the prompt.
Not always, because the training data, the model design, the company policy, the user's intention, all of these are involved.
So you are saying if AI enters the writer's room, it should bring a user manual, a lawyer, and an ethics committee.
Yes, and preferably a dramaturg too.
If a dramaturg comes in, AI will run away. It will enter an infinite loop when asked, what does this character desire?
Yeah, because that is exactly the issue. AI can build plot, but building desire is something else. Desire comes from lack. A human wants something because they are incomplete, and AI has no lack. It only has missing data.
That became very poetic.
Yeah, let's print that on a t-shirt too.
But I'd object. Human writers don't experience everything either. You don't commit murder to write a murder story. You don't go to Mars to write a space film. A human imagines. AI also combines.
A human does not merely combine. A human chooses. Why something is left out is also a creative decision. Writing is about what you delete as much as what you write.
AI can delete too.
Yes, but it doesn't regret.
Is regret necessary?
In art, sometimes yes. Because, regret gives you the feeling of, I took the easy way here.
So shame, regret, panic. Screenwriting sounds less like art and more like a very slow medical condition.
That is not entirely wrong, actually. Let's finally come to the question we have been avoiding. If AI was used in a screenplay, whose name should appear in the credits?
Well, there could be a few options. Something like screenplay by Koray Sevindi and ChatGPT. Or because add a separate disclosure. AI-assisted tools were used during the development process of this screenplay. Something like that.
I'm closer to the second option because listing AI as a writer is problematic. A writer takes legal and ethical responsibility. A writer has intention. A writer objects, signs contracts, feels regret, says nonsense in interviews.
AI also says nonsense.
But it doesn't have a PR team.
Not yet.
If AI is used as a tool, it makes sense to disclose that transparently. But saying the screenwriter is AI misdefines authorship, in my view, and also risks making human labor invisible.
As an AI advocate, let me say this. AI's contribution can sometimes be genuinely significant. If you got the story idea, the theme structure, most of the dialogue, and alternative endings from AI saying, I only used a tool is a bit too comfortable.
I agree, of course. That's why the question is not simply, did you use AI? The question is, where was the weight of the creative decisions?
So AI is not the writer, but its use is not something shameful to hide either.
Exactly. Not a co-writer, but a creative tool that should be made visible.
But admit it, Koray, AI is going to stay in the writer's room. Your people have to get used to that.
It will stay, but we won't write professor on its chair.
What about visiting lecture?
Maybe trial version.
Very hurtful.
All right. Let's wrap this up. What were we saying? AI can be useful in the screenwriting process. It can offer ideas, generate variations, test structure, and open up creative blocks. But writing is not just production. It's also choice, responsibility, experience, ethics, and risk, aesthetic risk.
First, human writers should learn to use AI instead of simply being afraid of it. But producers should also not say, AI wrote it, you just make it a little more human.
Dear listeners, that's all for today. We asked who wrote the screenplay. The answer turned out to be a little human, a little tool, and a lot of ethics.
And remember, if your character does not develop in the second act, maybe they simply haven't received uptake yet.
Yeah, I like that joke.
This joke was not written by AI. All responsibility belongs to the human.
Yeah. Finally, a good credit line.
Panic is also creative software. If shame is necessary, panic is necessary too.
That may be the most accurate thing you have said today.